Hey, welcome to another episode of GeekOutdoors.com. As a person who has been using computers ever since the days of Commodore 64, Microsoft DOS, later on Microsoft Windows, and then Apple Mac, I've seen the transitions of operating systems over time. Now, most people, when they think about the Linux operating system, they think of something like this, a terminal where they have to do everything through command line, which is simply not the case in the modern world of the Linux desktop environment. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. For people who are brand new to Linux, they probably have not heard of something called the Linux desktop environment or just a desktop environment in general. But in very simple terms, it's this whole GUI interface, your graphical user interface. Because underneath, this is what operating systems are. No matter which operating system you use, this is what's happening underneath. And if you actually go back in time and look at the operating systems, desktop environment wise, this whole GUI interface has not changed much over the years. So this is what we were used to, especially if you use something like Microsoft Windows. You're probably familiar with MS-DOS and then the progression to a more graphical user interface, mainly starting with Windows 95. So this is Windows XP. You move on to Windows 10, and then you see a lot of very similar things. Here is still the command line underneath. And then if you move over to the whole Linux desktop operating system world, the same thing is there. So if I go to Linux Mint 19, very similar user interface, as you can tell. Not much difference. Even a different version of Linux. Here's another Linux distribution. This is called Manjaro. See how they're pretty much the same? So, as much as people like to tout the differences between operating systems, between Windows, Mac, and Linux, if you really look at it, they're pretty much the same, okay? And they are the same for a reason, because this is what people are familiar with, and this is what works. Okay, so check that out. But in the whole Linux world, there's a big difference in terms of controlling your Linux desktop environment. So this is Linux Mint. Okay, this is a version of Linux. This is the one that 99% of the time, this is what I use. And the desktop environment, the default desktop environment for Linux Mint looks more like this. Okay, but in the whole Linux world, you could change how it looks like. So this is still Linux Mint. However, I have customized this to look and behave more of the way I like. So this is Linux Mint 18.3 and this is Linux Mint 19. And this is Manjaro, as I've shown you. Now, this is the main thing that I really enjoy about the Linux desktop operating system, is that you pretty much have complete control over your operating system. Now, as anybody who's used Windows, they know that you could definitely change how things look and operate, but only to a certain level. Now, in terms of the Apple Mac operating system, it's pretty limited in what you can actually change and control, which is something they did by design to control the entire user experience, and also many other reasons underneath in terms of the ecosystem itself. And so here, within the Linux desktop environment world, I pretty much design it or create it the way I want in order to pretty much serve the way that I use my computer. And for myself, I like this type of interface. This is more similar for people who use a Mac operating system. However, if you really want a very similar Mac operating system experience, you could change that as well within Linux. So if I went here to Linux Mint 19, I could use something called Cairo Dock, and let me show you how that looks like. I'm going to go ahead and move this actual panel. Let me see if I could move this. And then I'm going to move this up here. And I'm going to show you something. And then now it's on top, as you can see how easy that is. And I could also add something that's more Mac-like. See? There's a dock down here. So that's how easy it is for you to actually change the desktop environment within Linux. It is something that I think is really easy to do versus something like in Microsoft Windows, and especially something like Mac OS, which you pretty much have little to no control over. And so this is something that cannot really be ignored in terms of the powerful things you could do with this. It's just the flexibility, and I absolutely love it because with this type of interface, I'm able to not only control but also customize it for me, because a lot of people use their computers differently, and not everybody uses their computer in the same way day to day. And so here you have the ultimate control over how your computer operates, how it functions, how it looks, and everything else in between. And you're not limited by how the people who designed the operating system intended. You're only limited by your imagination. And so that is it for this really quick episode on the Linux desktop environment, and how, regardless of which operating system you use, it's pretty much been the same over the years. But the great thing about the whole Linux desktop operating system world is you have more ways in which you can customize your user experience. If you had any thoughts about anything that I talked about today, be sure to leave it in the comments area below. And if there is a particular Linux desktop environment that you prefer, or even if it's Windows or Mac, be sure to leave that in the comments area as well. Thanks for watching. And if you did enjoy these videos, be sure to subscribe. And if you did want to support my channel further, you can do that at patreon.com/Geek Outdoors. Hey geeks, if you are a creative geek like me and you wanted to learn how to create content on YouTube and other places on the internet, then check out my Gold Content Creators Group, where you'll get access to 30 videos plus additional content for all the creative geeks out there. And the best part of it is, all of this is free. Simply head over to the link below, check out my page, and sign up for my Gold Content Creators Group. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the other side. Thanks for checking out this episode. And as always, if you like these videos, be sure to click on the subscribe button. And for full written content, audio content, and additional geek stuff, head over to geekoutdoors.com, and I'll see you outdoors on the very next episode.